Every single person listening to me right now has woken up dreading the day ahead. You know that heavy, sinking feeling in your chest where the unknown future seems too sharp, too big, or too complicated to face? We spend our whole lives trying to manage that uncertainty. But there is one question that cuts through all the sophisticated adult coping mechanisms, and it's a question asked every night in quiet bedrooms across America by the children who are just learning how to navigate the world. In the soft amber glow of a dinosaur nightlight, just after the tucking in, the smoothing of the sheets, and the whisper of a final kiss on the forehead, 7-year-old Lily would always look up at her mother, Sarah, with wide, earnest eyes, and ask the same thing. It was a nightly ritual, a small, essential hurdle before surrender to sleep, a plea for assurance in the vast darkness. "Mom," she would whisper, her voice barely audible over the hum of the air purifier. "Mom, what if tomorrow is scary?" It wasn't that Lily was a chronically anxious child, but she was a thoughtful one. She felt the weight of the world keenly, the transition to the next grade level, the big presentation at school, the looming concept of trying out for the soccer team, or even just the fear that her favorite stuffed bear might fall out of bed in the dark. For Lily, tomorrow was a wild, untamed beast, and she needed the magical shield of her mother's words to face it. Sarah had learned to embrace the ritual. She knew a rushed reassurance wasn't enough. Lily needed a tangible story, a blueprint for bravery. This night, Sarah didn't reach for the usual pile of worn fairy tales. Instead, she pulled out a book with a navy blue cover, bound in simple cloth that they had never read before. It was a special book, kept on the highest shelf, reserved for moments that required a different kind of magic. Sarah settled into the rocker beside the bed, the springs groaning a familiar, comforting tune, and opened the navy book. She looked down at Lily, who had snuggled deeper under the quilt, ready to absorb the wisdom of the story. "This book," Sarah began, her voice low and melodic, "is about a girl named Alara. Alara loved today. She loved the known rhythm of today, the predictability of her socks matching, the taste of her favorite oatmeal, and the specific way the sun hit the corner of her window. But Alara, just like you, was terrified of tomorrow." Sarah began to weave the tale, painting a vivid picture of a small town nestled by an ancient forest where Alara lived. Alara's world felt small, and in that smallness, she felt safe. But the world, as it often does, eventually demanded she grow. The biggest tomorrow Alara had ever faced was the start of the 5th grade. It wasn't just a new teacher. It was a new wing of the school, new locker combinations, and the terrifying knowledge that her best friend, Maya, had moved across the country over the summer. Lily shifted, her breath catching slightly. Sarah paused, letting the fear sink in, the relatable agony of losing your anchor. Alara felt the dread like a heavy cloak, Sarah continued, adjusting her tone slightly to mimic the descriptive narrative of the book. It was cold and prickly, and every time she thought about walking through those double doors of the new school wing, the cloak seemed to tighten, squeezing the air right out of her lungs. She spent the entire Sunday evening before the first day hiding beneath her bed, watching the dust motes dance in the late afternoon light, wishing she could stay hidden forever. Her mother, sensing the depth of Alara's fear, did something simple. She didn't dismiss it or tell Alara to just be happy. Instead, she sat down on the floor beside the bed, eye level with her daughter, and handed her a smooth gray river stone. "This stone," her mother said, "is heavy with fear. Hold it." Alara gripped the stone. It felt heavy, cold, and solid, exactly like the dread she was feeling. "Now," her mother whispered, "I need you to carry it tomorrow. And every time you feel that cloak of fear tightening, look at the stone and ask yourself, What is the very next small thing I can do? The next morning, the terror was monumental. The school bus was loud, the faces were unfamiliar, and the building loomed like a fortress. Elara clutched the stone so hard her knuckles were white. When the bus stopped, she froze. Her feet felt glued to the floor. The heavy, gray stone felt like it was dragging her down. She remembered her mother's words. What is the very next small thing I can do? The very next small thing, Elara decided, wasn't walking all the way into the classroom or making a new friend. The very next small thing was simply standing up. She stood. The stone felt marginally lighter, perhaps because the act of moving had broken the spell of paralysis. The next small thing was walking down the aisle of the bus. She walked. Each step was deliberate, powered by nothing but the fierce commitment to not stop. The next small thing was putting one foot out the door onto the pavement. As she stepped off the bus, the morning air hit her face, crisp and sharp. She looked up at the intimidating school. The noise was overwhelming. Laughter, shouts, the squeak of shoes on asphalt. Elara saw a group of older students laughing near the entrance, and the fear instantly threatened to engulf her again. She reached into her pocket, felt the familiar cool solidity of the fear stone, and asked the question one more time. What is the very next small thing I can do? It was getting her locker open. That was it. A solvable, practical task. She focused all her energy on the numbers, ignoring the swirling chaos around her. Left to 23, right past 0 to 11, left to 37. Click. The lock sprang open. That tiny, mundane victory filled her with a rush of something warm, something that temporarily pushed back the heavy, cold cloak. It wasn't happiness, not yet. It was momentum. The day was filled with small terrors, each one demanding a decision. In math class, the teacher asked a question about fractions, and Elara, normally sharp, felt her mind go blank. Her hand trembled as she clutched the stone. What is the very next small thing I can do? It wasn't giving the right answer. It was just raising her hand to ask the teacher to repeat the question. That small act of acknowledging she didn't know, instead of sinking into silence, drew the teacher's attention. The teacher smiled warmly and repeated the question slowly. This time, Elara realized she did know the answer. She spoke it softly, and the teacher nodded, praising her effort. This was the secret Elara was beginning to uncover. Bravery wasn't a giant leap over a canyon of fear. Bravery was simply the steady, rhythmic application of one small effort after another, fueled not by the absence of fear, but by the determined refusal to let fear freeze you. Later that afternoon, a new challenge presented itself. During recess, Elara stood alone near the brick wall. Everyone else seemed to be playing an intricate, chaotic game of tag that she didn't understand. She watched them, longing to join, but the effort of asking felt too huge, too exposing. What if they said no? What if she ran the wrong way? She pulled out the stone again. It was still heavy, but now the fear felt less like a smothering blanket and more like a necessary weight, reminding her of the stakes. What is the very next small thing I can do? It wasn't joining the game. It was simply walking toward the action. She walked a few steps closer. She stopped about 10 feet away. Then she noticed a girl sitting on a bench near the perimeter, drawing intently in a spiral notebook. This girl, Maya, not her former best friend, but a new Maya, looked just as alone as Elara felt. What is the very next small thing I can do? It was walking over and saying hello. Just one word. Elara took a deep breath, swallowed the lump in her throat, and approached the bench. The stone felt like a small, warm pulse in her palm now. "Hi," Elara said, her voice a reedy squeak. The girl looked up, surprised, but she smiled, a genuine, open smile. "Hi, I'm Maya. I'm Elara. That drawing is really good. And just like that, the floodgates opened. They talked not about the intimidating game of tag or the overwhelming new school, but about the merits of blue pencils versus black pens and the best way to draw a realistic dragon wing. By the time the bell rang, signaling the end of recess, Ilara felt lighter than she had all day. The heavy cloak of fear had fallen to her ankles, replaced by the tentative warmth of connection. When Ilara got home that evening, she raced through the front door, collapsing onto the kitchen floor, exhausted but exhilarated. Her mother knelt beside her. "How was tomorrow?" she asked gently. Ilara opened her hand. The stone was still gray, still heavy, but it was also warm from being held all day. "It was scary," Ilara admitted, her voice thick with fatigue. "But Mom, I did scary things. I spoke to the teacher, and I made a new friend, and I found my classroom all by myself. I was terrified the whole time, but I kept doing the very next small thing." Her mother hugged her fiercely. "Do you understand now, sweet girl? Courage is not about not being scared. It is the decision to try anyway, even when the stone in your pocket feels too heavy." Every step you took today, Ilara, was an act of magnificent courage. Sarah closed the navy blue book, setting it gently on the bedside table. She looked back at Lily, whose eyes were wide and thoughtful. The story of Ilara had landed exactly where it needed to. "See, my sweet Lily," Sarah murmured, stroking her daughter's hair. "Tomorrow might be scary. It might feel like a new school, or a hard challenge, or just a day where the sun feels too bright and the worries feel too big. You might feel that heavy stone of fear right here in your tummy." Lily nodded slowly, processing the concept, the weight of the fictional stone feeling very real. But here is the most important part of the whole story, the part that doesn't need to be in a book because it is true every single day, no matter what tomorrow brings, Sarah said, leaning closer, her expression radiating absolute certainty. No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter how sharp the challenge or how heavy the fear, you will not be holding that stone alone. Do you understand? Lily shook her head slightly, confused. But Ilara was alone when she walked into the school. Ah, but she wasn't truly alone. She carried her mother's wisdom, and she knew she had a home to return to. And you, my darling, have me. Always. Sarah took Lily's small hand in hers. "If tomorrow brings a bad test, I will be here to help you study the day after. If tomorrow brings a mean word from a friend, I will always be here to listen to the whole story without interruption, and we will figure out what to say back. If tomorrow is simply overwhelming and all you need is silence and a bowl of popcorn, my arms will be open and my silence will be ready." She kissed Lily's forehead, the love flowing from her like a palpable warmth. "My job is to be your safety net. If you fall, I catch you. If you need a gentle push, I provide it. If you succeed, I cheer the loudest. Your job is only to decide what the very next small thing is that you can do. Maybe it's just tying your shoes. Maybe it's saying hello to one new person. Maybe it's simply taking a deep breath. You find that small thing, and you do it. And I will be right here, waiting to hear all about your courageous day." The tension that had tightened Lily's small shoulders finally began to dissolve. She looked around the dimly lit room, at the familiar ceiling, the worn rocking chair, the face of the woman who was her entire world. The uncertainty of tomorrow hadn't vanished, but the crippling fear of facing it alone had. Lily burrowed down into her pillow, pulling the quilt up to her chin. A serene smile touched her lips. She didn't have to be instantly fearless. She just had to try one thing at a time. And she knew that even if she tripped, the hands that smoothed her sheets tonight would be the hands that lifted her up tomorrow. Before drifting off, a soft whisper escaped her lips, carrying the hope and quiet determination of a soul finding its strength. I think tomorrow will be okay. That is the power of love, isn't it? It is the purest source of courage we possess. It's the unconditional promise that even when the road ahead is uncertain, even when the path is covered in shadows, we are connected to something stronger than our fear. It is the constant reassurance that no matter how many times we fall, there will always be someone waiting to help us stand up, dust ourselves off, and find the very next small, brave thing we can do. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the scared child or the reassuring parent, share this moment of quiet strength. Tell me in the comments below, what is the very next small thing you need to do to face your tomorrow? Let us build a community of courage, one small, brave step at a time.